right, well, sorry you've been running a little ragged and whatnot, but we appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with us. Thank you.
Oh, no, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. So you beat out over 200 actresses to play the part of Nancy. Do you ever look back and think about how easily things could have been different with the franchise of Nightmare on Elm Street if you hadn't gotten that part?
Yeah, people always say that there are 200 girls. I mean, I really call that into dispute, frankly, because I never got the impression there were that many people going up for this part. But, you know, you just have to remind yourself all the time that in this business especially, like, luck has 99% to do with people's success and being in the right place at the right time. And I have to say there were a whole bunch of events leading up to getting Nightmare on Elm Street where, you know, they're just so chancy, and just being in a place and meeting a certain person and having that person take interest in you, it's very hard to predict. And for me especially, I look back and sometimes I feel like, wow, it must have been meant to be, because there were so many chances along the way where it could have gone the other way. And I think everybody feels that way about their life and with certain things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I've always wondered, Robert Englund, what was he like when you weren't filming, whether it was on set, away from set? I mean, do you still have contact with him? What was he like, his personality, in terms of how he interacted with people when he wasn't in the Freddy persona?
You know, Robert's the kind of person that really is always at the center of the party, kind of. He's always the person who people look to for, the hottest restaurant or the best band, or, where the coolest place to go at the moment is. And he's always so up to the minute with the popular culture, even today. I mean, you ask him about an actor or about a TV show, or he's just so knowledgeable, and he makes it a point to just stay so involved in the culture. I remember, I was coming from college, and pretty sheltered environment. I'm from Oklahoma, and went to school in Washington, D.C., and pretty isolated, all-girls school kind of environment. And so meeting Robert Englund was always, I was always so, amazed at how much he knew. And he just knew so much. And I'm a few years younger than he is, so I really looked up to him. I really valued all of his advice. He had great advice for me, and always, he was just always one of those very exciting people to be around.
Mm-hmm. You said he offered you really good advice. What kind of advice did he offer you?
Well, he was a very serious actor. He studied classical, drama at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And so he'd also had a lot more experience in the movie business than I had. So we did a lot of rehearsing of our parts. Especially when it came time to doing the fighting scenes and trying to, create a dynamic between our two characters. Since really, as an actor that I've worked with, just really wanted to, nail down a lot of the details of the, just the interaction that we had, and making sure all the beats, between us were there. And we didn't have conversation. I mean, these were all parts of our performance that usually were more physical, like fighting or chasing, things that you don't usually think you need to do a lot of rehearsal for. But Robert always, he just let me know that the more you thought about it in advance, and the more you tried out new things and different things that might not work, things that might be too over the top and crazy, at least by expressing them and trying them out, you would have much better ideas going forward. And a lot of the problems I see sometimes in modern horror movies is that everybody's really subdued, and there's a lot of looking scared, but they kind of miss how to act scared or how to be scared in the moment, and things around them, some of the set pieces, some of the props that they have, they just don't really use them to their advantage. And a lot of the criticisms I have of modern horror is that the people don't interact with their environments very much, and Robert was the person who really taught me how to do that.
Okay. This is something I've always wondered about, and there was Amy Steele in Friday the 13th Part 2 said they used a high-speed camera for a scene where the Warrington Gillette was going to jump through the window to come get her while she was sitting on a bed. It always really freaked her out as soon as she heard them start revving up the high-speed camera because she knew at any second he was going to be popping through the window. Were there any scenes like that for you in any of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies or any other movie where it was just really difficult to get through because it just freaked you out that much?
I'm trying to think. This, so I'm just like thinking back onto some of the scenes that we had. I never really dreaded any part of any scene except there were a couple of in Nightmare 7. There's a scene where I have to slide down a long kind of a chute, and I did it the first time, and I realized that they hadn't really made this chute that well. There were some like nails and stuff kind of sticking out, and once you experience your set and it trips you up, or you realize that you have to think about what you're going to do. Then I get nervous because then I realize I'm going to have to be thinking about this aspect of the set rather than thinking about my performance as Nancy. And so whenever I ever, even if it was just a wardrobe thing that like was problematic, or the director, I have to say, like, often he was like, Wes would say, your hair is getting in the way of this shot. You need to figure out how to keep your hair out of your face. And like, as soon as someone gives me a direction like that, and I realize, oh my God, I'm going to be thinking about my hair, then I get uptight. It makes you feel like, oh my gosh, I could be the reason that this shot isn't going to work. And so that happens from time to time. But in general, I think the only time that I really stressed out was about my hair, because it was it was really long and it was always in the way, and I never wanted there to be a cut or, a stop in the action because my hair was doing something that didn't look good on camera. So I have to say that was probably like the silliest thing that I would worry about.
All right, of course, as an actress, you're best known for the Nightmare films, which brings me to a question you've probably been asked 1,000 times, but I have to ask anyway. Have you ever had a recurring nightmare that was so frightening and vivid for you that the memory has just stuck with you throughout your life?
Yeah, in fact, after Nightmare on Elm Street Part 7, Wes Craven's New Nightmare is what we called it. The scene where I'm down in the underworld with Freddy, Freddy's underworld, and his tongue comes out and wraps itself around my head, and it kind of squeezes me, and that is a very primal image, like really like a lot of phallic symbols going on in that scene.
Yeah.
I have to say that stayed with me for many, many years. That nightmare would recur all the time, and I think it got to me, that image of being kind of strangled. I feel like for a lot of women, that's probably like the scariest thing that can happen to you. And so that, of all the images of Freddy, is the one that has kind of stuck with me forever.
Okay. It's been rumored that Johnny Depp got the role of Glenn in the original Nightmare because the producer's daughter found him, quote, dreamy. Now, whether that's true or untrue, Depp, of course, is one of the biggest movie stars in the world. When you were working with him on that first film, did you ever think that Nightmare would have the impact it did, number one, or number two, that Depp would go on to have such enormous success?
Well, it's funny, when you're young like that and you're working with other young actors, you just don't have the capability of looking into the future at all. I mean, young people are so rooted in the here and now, and people are really struggling hard to get by, that day, that week. Everyone's thought process is so short term. At least I felt that way. I was looking 1 month ahead in my life. I don't think I was looking much farther than a couple of years ahead. And with all the actors, it never occurred to me like what we would be doing next or where we would be in 10 years. I just don't think that way. But I do certainly know that he got the part because Wes Craven's daughter did think that he had something really special. I was the person who actually aired out that story in my documentary, I Am Nancy. I had Jessica actually tell the story on film.
All right, you talked about it a little earlier here, criticisms of modern horror films and whatnot. What did you think, and do you have any criticisms of the remake, with the Nightmare remake, with Rooney Mara playing your part, and of course, Jackie Earle Haley taking on Robert Englund's iconic Freddy character?
I see the movie, I made a really conscious decision that I like the Nightmare on Elm Street film just the way it is, and I don't think that remakes in general are any good. Not because the actors aren't good, but I don't think you can take a movie out of its time. I think the reason Nightmare on Elm Street is so great is that it took place in 1984, and that we were certain people back then, and America was a place, and the props that we had and the houses that we lived in were all very important to the story. And I think that directors and producers forget that part that makes a movie great is how it's set and where in time in America it is set. And so I kind of knew when I saw the previews that I wasn't going to be particularly excited about watching it, so I decided not to see it, and I still haven't.
Okay. You know, you have a refreshing take on acting and priorities and happiness in life, and I was just, that's not something you always hear very often in Hollywood. I was wondering if you could share some of those perspectives with our viewers, just your take on the balance between a professional and personal life.
Yeah, it's interesting, because sometimes, I think it's been a liability for me, but I don't know, I just really have always felt like my personal relationships and my family were the most important relationships that I have, that I'll have them for my whole life, and that I kind of want to do the best I can by those people that, like my kids and my husband, I don't want to let them down by maybe, I don't know, I just feel like in the movie industry you often have to compromise your family life for your professional life, and of course I've seen it over and over a lot, and I'd see a lot of people being really successful, but I found that when I tried to do it, I was just a loser on all fronts. I just, I didn't give my kids enough attention, and then I wasn't doing that great as an actor, and then if somebody would offer me an audition for a part, I never could rehearse it to the point where I felt proud of what I was bringing into the office. And so I realized that, one, I've always thought that life was really long, and that if acting is the thing that I was meant to do, that I'll always have an opportunity to do it. And the second thing is that once I had my kids, in your 30s in Los Angeles as an actress, it's really hard to get work. So it wasn't as if I gave up a ton. I wasn't getting a lot of auditions or parts at the time that I had my family. So it sounds like it might have been a huge sacrifice, but it really was a very natural progression, and I realized this is pretty awesome being a mom, and I feel really like fulfilled, and that this is a really worthwhile thing to do. So I didn't feel like I was saying goodbye to that much, because truly, I wasn't working a hell of a lot in my 30s.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about the Malibu Gum Company? Are you still involved with that?
No, I still own the Malibu Gum Factory. It was kind of just a fun thing to do for me and my husband when we had some time off there wasn't a lot going on at that summertime. It was, I guess, in 2000, maybe it was even like the year 2000. It was quite a while ago now. And, we love surfing. We're at the beach quite often, and I love photography, so I decided to create this company where we would have just average people on surf trading cards, not superstars and not people who already are sponsored, by big companies, but that we would just really highlight the fact that there's thousands of people all over the world surfing, and they look pretty darn good doing it. So we printed up, all in all, like 250, 300 trading cards all told, and we would put out our chewing gum, and in each pack was two, cards featuring two surfers. And it was something that we did for maybe 3 or 4 years, and we sold it at surf shops around Los Angeles and around the country. And it was so much fun to do. But what I learned about myself is, one, I hate to be a salesperson. I'm a really bad salesperson. And so, it was kind of successful. But if I had like a really good salesman, I think I probably could have made it into a much bigger and kind of more prosperous venture. But I still have it. I own it. And, maybe someday if I get a windfall or win the lottery, maybe I'll go back into making Malibu gum.
All right. So then finally, can you tell us a little bit about AFX Studio, how it began, how you're involved, some of the current projects you guys are working on?
Yeah, so AFX Studio started out as Lance Anderson Makeup Designs back in 1979, and that was my husband's dad, and he kind of a very prominent makeup effects artist in his own right. It was his second career. He started when he was 40. So by the time my husband was about 20, his dad offered him a job, and they worked on, dozens and dozens of films, Serpent in the Rainbow, Shocker, a lot of Wes Craven's early films, and then moved on to do lots of other movies. And then maybe like in 2000, 15 years ago or so, his dad retired and David took over the company. And at that same time, it was, my kids were of a certain age where I kind of was looking for work and I wanted to do something. And so we decided that I would work here at the studio as his, assistant / partner. And the first movie that we really did together was Dawn of the Dead. And then, it's over the years, we did Cabin in the Woods. We finished Star Trek last year. We've done a few films this year. One's called Chupacabra, and we've been working on Crossbones, which is John Malkovich's TV show. And we've taken on some pretty big projects, but my husband is a designer. He does all the artistic work and all the designs. He's in charge of making everything, and then I am his partner in terms of, working with production, scheduling, making sure everything's on time, and I take care of all the bookkeeping. And so we have a really great partnership, and yet he has to take all the credit because he's the one who is actually in charge of the way everything looks and being the perfectionist that he is, turning things out that look really good. So I think we're most proud of what we did in Cabin in the Woods. That movie, I don't know if you've seen it, but we had hundreds of monsters and zombies and mutants and all sorts of crazy makeup effects that were all practical. Very little, if any, CGI at all. So those kinds of movies don't get made anymore, hardly.
All right, we really appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk with us today. It's been a thrill. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you, Landon.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.